Hey, I am Caitlin and I work at the CWC and I'm going to tell you about some of the most important parts of an annotated bibliography in gender studies. So we're going to look at three different points, focus on the theory and the impact of the theory, critically examining the author, and objective reasoning in relation to your source. So we're going to look at two different examples, both a long annotation and a short annotation from a student in the Gender Studies department. So these two assignments are very different in relation to their focus, but they have all of the key components required for an annotated bibliography. So the short assignment, we're just going to briefly explain what they're about to give you a little more background information, is about framing in relation to ghost marriages, and this was actually written to write another paper later on. While a long assignment is more of a final paper type situation, that was a take-home exam that connects all of the readings in class to a single reading called The Personal is Political. So first we're going to talk about the focus of the importance of focus on the theory and the impact of the theory. Okay, so in gender studies, it's important to focus on more than just the theory. You have to think about how it's going to affect either the world or your discipline, or specifically for your paper. So an example of this in relation to the short one. So from the short one, we're going to talk about this specifically, the second citation, which is that Joyce takes the idea of ghost marriages and frames it as a horrendous act based on extremists. So that is the theory, while the sentence at the bottom that says this creates a negative frame based on biased information that is directly harming the community that practices ghost marriages talks about the impact. While for a longer assignment, we are looking at the first annotation, which says this article discusses the different ways individuals redefine resilience and survival before stating that the idea of resilience should not exist because it seems to give permission to cause more harm since the individuals can handle it. So this sentence shows part of the theory and the impact at the same time, but to just reinforce the importance of the impact, there's a few sentences below that does this, such as women should not be solely responsible for their own survival or solely responsible for the pain and the issues that they face. So our second point is that you must critically examine the author. So this focuses on the fact that gender studies is interdisciplinary and there are multiple different walks of life, people from all different worlds when it comes to writing on your subject. So this means you have to specifically think about the qualifications that your author has in relation to your subject overall. So going back to our short example, we can look at the first citation, which is Briggs and Sharp, talk about how outsiders frame insiders through their own experiences. So the qualifications for gender studies for this specific piece is coming from the fact that they're talking about their own experiences, which is totally and perfectly valid and acceptable within gender studies. So for the longer annotation, we're going to look at the same source, but we're going to look at the very beginning, which is Sarah Brock is a sociologist who focuses on gender, sexuality, and feminist theory. So this perfectly sums up how this author is credible to be able to talk about this based on their qualifications, because what they're talking about connects specifically to gender and feminist theory overall, since we're talking about the way that women redefine their resilience for the gender part, and then this theory of resilience and survival is a big piece of feminist theory. And then our third point is objective reasoning. So objective reasoning has a unique piece of it for gender studies. So objective reasoning specifically focuses on two parts, which is if the source actually supports or connects to your overall point. But the part that is unique to gender studies is that you have to critically examine the source to see if it aligns with others that have the same general idea. So this allows you to decide if your source is an outlier or not, and this doesn't mean that you can't use it, because of course not everyone is going to agree on everything in relation to theory. That's just not possible. But when you have an author that does not agree with the majority, you have to think about their work more critically and objectively in order to determine if it's actually valid or not. So we're going to look at the short example again to be able to see this, and we're going to look at two different ones for this piece. So we're going to look at the second citation and the third one. So the second citation is actually not valid, but it does connect to the point overall that is being made in the paper later on, so it's still allowed, but it does show that the author is biased because they're only talking about the extremist for the specific belief, while in the citation below, this is being pulled from the specific person, which is the second author of this paper. So they take the personal experiences of the author to show the framing as a positive religious practice, and they normalize the practice in its context by examining it in a way that any other religious practice would be. So this is really important in relation to putting it in its own context based on what ghost marriages is about, and giving it the same respect as any other religious practice, which directly connects to actually proving that the argument overall is valid. So for the longer annotation, I'm going to look at the second citation, which talks about directly is a valid argument, so we don't have to look at that part because the author agrees with a lot of other authors in relation to feminist theory, but connecting it to the argument overall is starting right here, where humans need support from one another to thrive. This means that individuals have to give support to gain support. They cannot survive in a society if they are not helping one another and standing together for political change and expression. So this is showing how it directly connects to the article, The Personal is Political, because the main point of that article is that you have to work together and that you cannot stand and fight alone to be able to succeed political change. And then this is once again reiterated in our last sentence that says humans cannot and should not ever try to stand alone because they depend on one another in their daily lives and for political movements towards a more just world. So there are multiple different ways to do annotated bibliographies based on what department that you are a part of. Gender studies just has some qualifications that are unique to its own for an annotated bibliography. So once again, there's the three really important pieces of an annotated bibliography that are different for gender studies than other departments, which is not focusing only on the theory, but also on the impact that it has, and then also focusing on examining the author critically and also examining the content through objective reasoning. So gender studies is interdisciplinary by nature. That's just a part of the way that it works. It's a combination of a lot of different departments. Therefore, it can be very confusing trying to figure out exactly how to do an annotated bibliography for a department that is just a huge interdisciplinary group. So I hope that these three different important pieces have shown you that I've shown you can help you understand the way to write an annotated bibliography in the gender studies department, whether you're writing it or tutoring a student in the CWC for it. Thank you.